What's up YouTube, I'm Mike, and today I'm actually going to try to stay relatively calm for this video and not scream and yell and keep it relatively short because I understand that attention spans aren't long for people who are trying to learn things that they have formulated a roadblock to in their mind, primarily caused by the preponderance of bro science in this community. As I referenced in my wife's video earlier, what I'm going to be talking about today is the myth about long-acting or long esters. What we're talking about today is the difference between short and long esters. For example, long esters being Cypionate, Propionate, Enanthate, Decanoate, Undesolinate versus like Propionate or acetate. Somebody in one of my videos recently commented when I was saying that I was adding nandrolone to my cycle at the 12-week mark, and he was like, well, aren't you concerned about the fact that it's going to take 8 weeks for the Deca to kick in? And I was like, no, I'm not concerned about that because it doesn't take 8 weeks for Deca to kick in. There seems to be a misconception in the entire bodybuilding community that long esters are slow esters. Long esters are not slow acting esters. It does not take a long time for a long ester to kick in. Even Greg Doucette has commented about this in one of his videos. He didn't break it down the way I'm about to break it down, I don't think, but he pointed out that all you people who are saying it takes 4 weeks to feel your test C or E are crazy. It doesn't take 4 weeks for a long-acting ester to kick in. So I'm going to try to explain this very basically. If you don't trust what I'm saying and you need to follow along, then there's going to be some links in the description to the charts that I'm referencing here. So you might want to click on those links, get them up on your screen so that you can see what we're discussing, or you can just like fucking trust me, because at the end of the day, I don't really give a shit. I already figured this out. I'm just trying to help dispel this myth that it takes 4 or 6 weeks for test to kick in, or it takes 8 weeks for Deca to kick in. I have been running Deca for a week and a half now, and I went to the gym tonight and forgot that I had joints. I forgot that I had joints because I already don't feel them, because somehow the Deca is already working on my joints. How could that possibly be that a long ester is already working in my system? The first chart that we have here is it says 8 comparative pharmacokinetics of 194 milligrams of testosterone enanthate and 200 milligrams of testosterone cypionate. So what we have here is a half-life chart. If you don't want to click my links or you can't for any reason, all you have to do to vet the information that I'm getting ready to give you is take whatever ester you're concerned with and you type in testosterone cypionate half-life chart, nandrolone decanoate half-life chart, and Google is replete with all kinds of examples of exactly how the pharmacokinetics work. So when you inject 200 milligrams of testosterone cypionate, the amount of the drug in your system peaks at the 24-hour mark. It takes 24 hours for the drug you injected to reach peak serum concentration for that dose. At 24 hours, you will have approximately 46 to 48 nanomoles of testosterone in your system. That's for the long-acting ester. It takes 24 hours for the testosterone to kick in, to be active in your bloodstream and start doing what it does. When it peaks in your system, it's going to start imparting all of its effects. It's going to bind to aromatase and turn into estrogen. It's going to bind to 5-alpha reductase and turn into DHT. It's going to bind to sex hormone binding globulin and get turned into nothing. And some of it is going to be free to float the fuck around and bind to an androgen receptor where it's going to act activate the receptor and start doing what you want it to do, which is the work of building muscle or stimulating your sex drive and all the things that androgens do. That's the long-acting ester. If you look at the other chart, you will see the 5 multiple dose pharmacokinetics of testosterone propionate after injection of 50 milligrams testosterone propionate twice per week. So what you will notice, coincidentally enough, on the short-acting ester is that you inject 50 milligrams of test prop, and at the 24-hour mark, you have approximately 40 nanomoles of testosterone in your bloodstream. The difference is not in how quickly it works, it's in how long it works. That's why it's called a long ester, not a slow ester. It's a short ester, not a fast ester. So when people tell you, another guy the other day was like, well, Mike, you seem to like to tinker with your cycle a lot. Why don't you use fast-acting esters? Why don't you use short esters like prop or acetate so that you can change things up quickly? There's no need to do that. The only conceivable reason somebody would be using short-acting esters, in my estimation, I'm open to be proven wrong, but the only thing that I can really imagine is, one, you're in contest prep, and so, for example, you've got a certain amount of testosterone in your system that you want to get completely out of your system by, say, week 6 or 4 or whatever, because you don't want any 5-alpha reduction, you don't want any water retention, you don't want any estrogen, you want to be as dry and peeled and lean as possible. When you're dealing with bodybuilders who are competitive, they have to dial in these things down to the hour or even the minute. When a bodybuilder is going on stage, he wants to peak his condition when he's standing in front of the judge so that he can place as high as possible. So it's very important to be able to control the minutia of what's going on in his system when he doesn't have weeks on end to play with. So yes, if you're a competitive athlete, short-acting esters are going to be invaluable to you, because what we see in the testosterone propionate chart, which is its weakness to everyone else, is that at the 24-hour mark, you have 40 nanomoles of test in your system. But by the 48-hour mark, you have 8 nanomoles of test in your system, which is why you have to pen test prop every single day. Honestly, if I ever choose to use test prop, I would probably pen it twice a day. I would probably want even less of a curve than you're going to get from once a day injections. So when you go back to the Propionate chart, you'll notice that you have 40 nanomoles at the 24-hour mark. And then you have about 40, we're going to call it 46 nanomoles at the 24-hour mark. Then you have approximately 46 nanomoles at the 48-hour mark. And then you have approximately 42 nanomoles at the 36-hour mark. And then you start to drop down to about 38 nanomoles at the 4-day mark, which is the whole purpose of long-acting esters. They stay in your system for a longer period of time. They stay closer to peak serum concentration for a longer period of time, meaning you don't need to inject as frequently. This is the reason that I inject esters every 3.5 days, because for the first 3 days, the drug is very stable in your system. You're only experiencing about a less than 10 nanomole drop in peaks in total serum concentration. When you compare that to a propionate ester, if you're pinning once every other day or once a day, you're experiencing a 40 nanomole change. You're going from effectively 0 to 40 down to 8. This is a huge spike and trough, which is going to cause a whole host of negative side effects. So the key that I'm trying to drive home here is that long-acting esters are not slow-acting esters. It does not take 4 weeks for you to feel Tren E. You will fucking 100% feel the psychological effects of Tren E in the first week to 2 weeks, guaranteed. Guaranteed, if your Tren is real, you are feeling it psychologically affecting you in that first week. The problem with testosterone is it's not terribly psychoactive. And strength is slower to come by, but that has a lot more to do with minimally effective dose. So one thing that I don't want to mislead anyone on is what we're talking about when we're talking about injections is the peak serum concentration of that injection. When someone says it takes 6 weeks or 8 weeks for a long-acting ester to kick in, it does not take that long for it to kick in. It kicks in and starts doing its work within the first 24 hours of injection. It is already in your bloodstream doing its job. The problem is that what we're dealing with is minimally effective dose. So if you're trying to target 200 milligrams of test a week because that's the dose that you need to get the effects that you want, what you are actually trying to do is make sure that your serum concentration never falls below 200 milligrams per week. It's always going to peak at or above 200 milligrams a week, and you can see this again if you look up, and I'm not doing it right now, if you look up a weekly testosterone enanthate chart, but we can do the math together. So we know that test E and test C have approximately 7 to 8 day half-life. So if we're doing single injections a week, and you inject, for example, 200 milligrams of test E or C, you have 200 milligrams in your system. So let's say you pin that on Monday. The following Monday, the amount of drug in your system has reduced by half. That's its half-life. So the next Monday, you have 100 milligrams of test in your system. So your peak was 200, your trough was 100, which means if the minimally effective dose is 200 milligrams, you were only getting that within the first 24 hours, maybe 36 hours total. The rest of that week, you were below the minimally effective dose. So at the start of week 2, you have 100 milligrams in your system. You pin 200 milligrams again. Now you jump up to 300 milligrams total peak serum concentration. And a week later, 7 days later, your 300 has been reduced by half. And so you're at 150. So then you pin 200 again. So you jump from 150 up to 350. So at the end of week 3, 350 divided by 2 is, Sarah, 100 and whatever the fuck that is. It's reduced in half. What? 175. So if you plot out the chart, every week that you pin 200 milligrams, you are slowly raising the trough amount in your system, and it will take about 8 weeks. It starts getting smaller and smaller differences. If you plot it out, you can see this. So if the minimally effective dose for you to see the results that you want of a long ester is 200 milligrams, then it will take greater than 6 weeks for you to get to the minimally effective dose. That does not make the ester itself slow acting. Every one of those injections that you take is acting within the first 24 hours of the injection. It's just taking a long time to build up your trough amount to the minimally effective dosage. So some people go, oh, well, I need to take test prop. I need a fast acting ester. I need to get to the minimally effective dose faster. Well, you could do that, but again, you're gonna have these huge spikes. This is why people recommend front loading. So if you want to take a long ester and get to the minimally effective dose quickly, then you front load it by taking a higher dose to begin with. So for the example, with 200 milligrams, if you inject 400 milligrams of test on your first week, you start at 400, and then a week later, your trough is 200. So if you inject 300 milligrams, then you jump back up to 400, and then your trough, it drops back down to 200. So you can keep your trough higher quicker by injecting more drug at the front end of the cycle. That's called front loading your cycle. The drug is as fast acting as a short ester. There is no difference in how quickly they start acting. The only difference is in how long it takes to get to your target dose and how frequently you have to inject yourself to keep your dose stable. So when somebody tells you that it takes a long time for Deca to kick in, that is absolutely not true. The first day that I pinned 200 milligrams of Deca, I had 200 milligrams of Deca in my system 24 hours later. The problem is that it's just gonna drop in half, and it's gonna take a long time for me to get to a stable trough of 200 milligrams. For my purposes of joint repair, I don't need a high dose. It is well known in the medical community that a relatively small dose of nandrolone is sufficient to develop cartilage in your joints and to ease joint pain. So since I'm not really using it to grow, there's no impetus for me to front load a shitload of Deca. But in all honesty, I would have injected a lot more Deca if I knew how it was going to interact with the trend. The whole thing that I'm really doing on my cycle is testing to see what 219-nor compounds feel like in my system together. And right now I'm happy to report that I feel fucking amazing. I'm feeling no negative side effects thus far in the early going from pinning 100 milligrams of Tren E and 200 milligrams of nandrolone Decanoate per week. We will see if that stays true when the minimally effective dose, when the trough amount of nandrolone actually reaches 200 milligrams. But I'm already getting the effect of the nandrolone that I want, and because I'm trying to be careful with what it does to my psyche, I'm not in a rush to do things more quickly. So please stop spreading the fucking bullshit bro science that long-acting esters are slow-acting esters. Long-acting esters work just as fast as short. E is 24 hours to peak concentration. Prop is 24 hours to peak concentration. The only thing that you're fucking playing with is how many needles you need to flush down you need to throw away, how frequently you need to jab yourself to keep your serum concentration in some kind of level, I mean, obviously it's creasing, but some kind of level state. That's where the vast majority of the side effects come from, which is the reason that some people will recommend microdosing Test E. I get people telling me this all the time. Bro, why don't you just pin Test E every day and then you will get less estrogen conversion? That may or may not be true. Honestly, I'm never going to find out because I don't play games with my estrogen. I already know exactly how much Arimidex to take. I'm not risking it. I'm not playing with it. I'm not destroying my marriage over testing something that pharmacologically makes no sense to me. Because if I pin Test E every day, then every day I still have the same amount at the 24-hour mark. So it would logically follow that daily injections of Test E are constantly going to replenish that 24-hour peak concentration, and that you would get a very stable amount of hormone in your system. And if that stability prevents 5-alpha reduction and aromatase, then we can have a conversation about that. It's just that I've yet to see any scientific data that you can trick the body into not having gene expression or not having enzyme activity by having the flattest curve possible. I have yet to see this demonstrated in medical science. If you guys enjoy pinning Testy every day and you want to go through 7 pins a week and jab yourself like a fucking pin cushion so that you don't have to take any Arimidex, that is cool with me, man. Good for you guys. Drop all the pins you want. I personally would rather inject twice a week and take a few pills a week that come with 0 side effects and control my estrogen that way rather than deal with fucking pinning myself every single day. I already pin way more than I want to begin with. So there you have it. The point of this video is to try to drive home the fact that there is a misnomer or a miscommunication between long-acting and slow-acting, or short-acting and fast-acting. This is not the way these esters work. They both peak in the system at exactly the same time. The only difference is how long it takes for them to exit your system, which again, in my estimation, only makes sense if you're either A, competing in a bodybuilding competition, or B, maybe you're a drug-tested athlete. You know, if you have to pass a drug test, then you need to get everything out of your system as quickly as possible. That would be another good reason to play around with short-acting esters. When I pin Masteron or Tren or Test, I don't need it to happen tomorrow. And if I wanted it to happen tomorrow, rather than pinning a prop or an ace, I would just front load the shit out of it. So if I wanted 600 milligrams of Test in my system tomorrow, I would pin 1200. And then my trough would be 600 at the end of the first week. So that's the quickest way to get to whatever trough you want, because no matter how you pin it, you're always going to get a peak that's effectively twice as high as your trough if you're dealing with, for example, an E-ester. That's the way it works. So hopefully that made sense. I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of people arguing this point in the comments section because of what's called cognitive dissonance. You have spent so many years believing a lie that it takes 4, 6, or 8 weeks for a certain compound to start working or kick in your system, and that is absolutely untrue. And so cognitive dissonance makes it very hard for you to accept what I'm saying. If you do the most basic amount of research, go watch Greg's video, he'll tell you the same thing. Long-acting esters are not slow-acting esters. As always, thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one.